Good morning, everyone. You are all very welcome to our Mind Your Selfie Day event on youth, mental health and resilience. My name is Tamara Nolan and I'm the Director of Communications and Advocacy for St. Patrick's. I'm going to be getting the introduction started this morning before handing over to our special guest moderator. So today's event is brought to you by Walk in My Shoes, which is the flagship mental health awareness and education campaign of St. Patrick's Mental Health Services. After a particularly challenging year, we know lots of us are looking forward to coming out of lockdown and re-engaging with all we've been away from. So to help us prepare for this new stage, we've invited a range of young people's organisations and interest groups to come together today. And we're going to be exploring some of the key learnings from the last year and the tools and resources that you can use to mind your selfie and readjust to change in the weeks and months ahead. So we've been running Mind Your Selfie Day for a number of years now, and it's traditionally a social media campaign that's designed to open up conversations about and encourage positive attitudes towards mental health. So today we're inviting all of our attendees and all of our panelists to share their photographs and experiences of how you've learned to mind your selfie during the COVID-19 pandemic on your own social channels. So we'd love as many people as possible to use and see the hashtag Mind Your Selfie so that we can spread positivity and show support for one another. So you can tell us right now also, because we're going to do a Zoom poll this morning. And if you haven't done a Zoom poll before, don't worry, I'm going to explain it now. I haven't done one myself, so we'll help each other along. So we're going to get started with an easy question. Our producer, Sinead, is going to pop a Zoom poll up on the screen there. And you should be able to see a question saying, have you learned new ways to mind your selfie? So this is just a practice question to get us used to it. So if you want to answer there and choose yes or no, our attendees should be able to vote. And I'll give you just a few seconds there to cast your vote. And I think it's a pretty easy one now. So I'm going to ask our webinar producer, Sinead, to show you the results. Yes, you have learned. 77% of you have learned new ways to mind your selfie. 23% of you have said no, you haven't learned new ways to I suppose, mind your well-being and over the last 12 months. So hopefully today's session and today's panel discussion will teach you some new ways that you can, mind your own well-being and protect your mental health as we all emerge from lockdown. So we're going to start now with the second question. And the second question, our producer Sinead again is going to pop it up on screen. How have you learned to mind your selfie? So for those of you who answered yes to that question, please select one or more of the following. Is it through exercise? Is it through taking up a new hobby? Is it through spending time with family, reading, cooking, talking about your feelings? Has that helped you over the last 12 months or other? Please cast your vote. And if you're getting involved on social media today, just a reminder while you're voting there, please use the hashtag Mind Your Selfie, and we'd love if you could tag us as well at Walk in My Shoes. So I'll give you another few seconds to cast your vote. And now I'm going to ask Sinead again, would you mind just pulling up the answers for us? So great, in the lead there is exercise. 29% of you have used exercise over the last 12 months to help you mind your selfie. 12% of you have been talking about your feelings, 15% have taken up a new hobby, 9% through spending time with family, 12% through reading, and 12% through cooking. Very good. Thank you for participating in that. Okay, great. So I think I have probably spoken for enough time now. I'm going to hand over to our guest moderator, Ryan Klatt, very soon. But before I do, I'm going to invite our CEO, Paul Gilligan, to unmute his microphone and to say a few words to start us off this morning.
Yeah, thanks a million, Tamara. I mean, Mind Your Selfie is one of my favorite events. The concept is great. It's built on the selfie idea. It's very simple, but I think this year in particular, it's really important because we've had 18 months of a pandemic. There's still a huge amount of uncertainty, and there's no doubt that at many levels, we're all suffering from a sort of a post-traumatic stress reaction to what's happened. But that, I'm not trying to be dramatic about that, and how we react to that will be all very different. We'll all have our own individual ways of managing that and coping with that, of needing help, etc. But I think it's worth acknowledging that. I'm delighted that we're joined by so many young people and indeed so many really good, really important organizations that work with young people. I don't think you get a better list. Fantastic organizations doing fantastic work. What is my message? Well, the first thing I would say to young people today is that we haven't been through a pandemic as adults before. None of us have. So we don't really know how we're going to manage coming out of this pandemic and what the emotional and psychological impact is going to be. And of course, it's going to be different for us all. So the first thing I would say is it's really important that we back ourselves, that we trust others, and that we learn to embrace uncertainty. And I think that has been really important over the last 18 months. But what do I mean by that? Well, when I say backing ourselves, what I really mean is that we believe that we are, first of all, that we're loved. Secondly, that we have the ability to be happy. And thirdly, that we believe we are good people. If we back ourselves, then it makes it much easier to stay emotionally healthy, to be able to deal with emotional issues. And, you know, if we can keep reinforcing those three things to ourselves, for ourselves, that's really important. I think the second thing is trusting others. I mean, most people around us, our parents, our siblings, our sisters and brothers, our teachers, the organizations that are there to help us, they want to do what's best for us. They want to help us. So we shouldn't be afraid to tell them that we trust them, to put our faith in them. And that involves, I suppose, not being afraid to recognize and express how we feel, to outline our positive and our negative thinking, being able to be true to ourselves, listening and communicating with these people is really important. And then, of course, the uncertainty piece. We really have had to learn to embrace uncertainty. And the only way you can do that is to find meaning in it. And I know young people in particular have been fantastic at that. I've talked to many young people who have experienced huge losses, both at school level, at social level, and they have found the meaning through wanting to protect people that they love, that they feel are vulnerable, or indeed doing their bit for society. And we've heard lots of negativity about young people. But in fact, the majority of young people have really stepped up and faced up to what they've been asked to do to protect more vulnerable others. We'd have learned from this experience, no doubts, a lot of good will come out of it and some not so good. We have learned to be resilient. But what do I mean by resilient? When I say resilient, I mean it's the ability to mentally or emotionally cope with a crisis. And, you know, it's really important that we, you know, how we define a crisis, how we define ability, and how we define coping is different for us all. And part of the difficulty with being a young person is that often people around us, our adult supporters, they define these things in the context of how they see things. But one of the key things we need to do is be brave enough to define these things as we see them. So very often adults define coping in one way, whereas a young person defines it in a different way. A crisis for a young person is very different than a crisis for an adult. And indeed, the interpretation of what's happened around COVID-19 will be different for us all. We may think that we understand what it's like to be a young person through this, but we really don't. I think it's really important that we also face up to the fact that we're going to, you know, many of the changes we've made will suit us, but there's going to be a lot of relearnings for us. We really have adapted very fast to change socially and relationship-wise, but I think there's going to be a need for some relearning. We're going to need to retrain ourselves around some social interactions. I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but, you know, when I have to socially interact now, I actually start thinking about it because it's relatively new. For the last 18 months, that hasn't been happening. We need to be learning to take reasonable risks, to re-engage at a face-to-face level, to come away from Zooms and all that stuff when the time is correct. But I think, you know, it's a time for hope and optimism. I mean, one of the biggest things that I would say to people today is, particularly young people joining us, is believe in your own emotional resilience. That doesn't mean that you don't experience stress or depression. It doesn't mean that you won't need help to resolve some of that stuff. But deep down, you have emotional resilience. You know that. And if you can tap into that, it makes some of the challenges easier to deal with. Again, I want to thank the organizations for joining us. I want to thank the young people for joining us. And lastly, I want to congratulate and thank Tamara and Amanda for all the incredible work they've done and all the communications team. This is a really important event. It's part of our key ethos to drive awareness, and they've always done a great job. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you for taking part today. And of course, we're really looking forward to seeing your own selfie shared on social media at some point over the course of the day. So now it's time for me to introduce and hand over to our special guest moderator today. I'm going to invite Ryan Klatt, who has just recently graduated from our transition year program, to unmute there and to turn on his microphone. Hi, Ryan, you're very welcome. Ryan is going to be taking on the moderating of our quickfire panel discussion this afternoon, or this morning, I should say, I'm sorry. So Ryan, it is over to you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Tamara. Hello, everyone. My name is...
Ryan, you're just on mute there. Do you want to unmute?
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Klatt. I go to Gorey Community School and I'm going into 5th year. I will now introduce our... Sorry, one second. I'll now introduce our panelists. First up, we have ISPCC. Then we have Spun Out, Cavarilla Nanog, Belong To, Whims, SBMHS, and Shelbourne Youth Academy. I will now explain the rules. So each panelist will have some questions that they will need to answer, which will be 3. They will have 1 minute to answer the questions. After their time is up, I will put up the hands up emoji, which is this, to signal that their time is up. We will now begin our first panel with our first panelist, which is ISPCC. So our first question is, what are the challenges young people coming to you have seen over the last 12 months?
Thanks a million, Ryan. There has been a huge number of challenges for children and young people. I think when you consider what has the pandemic changed for the general public and then what has changed for children, I think in many ways children have had the worst in terms of changes, considering the length of time they've been away from school, from friends, from peers, and effectively their support system that was always there was now changed. So we saw a huge number of different challenges coming forward into the services. The big ones around COVID. Children and young people are worried about the impact of COVID. There was increased anxiety and mental health issues, tensions at home, so more arguments with parents, maybe some challenges with siblings because they were spending so much time together. But I think the big one was around feelings of isolation, feelings of loneliness. And I think a lot of children would have contacted us during the past 12 months because they simply needed to talk to somebody. And that's why it's so important to take care of yourselves and remember that talking does make you stronger. And there are services available 24 hours a day.
Okay, we will now go to our next question, which is, how has demand for your services been impacted?
Well, demand went way up in March 2020 when the pandemic first started. We saw a massive surge across all of the services, so the text service, the online chat, and our phone service. And initially, it was all relating to COVID and fear around COVID and what was actually going to happen. We've noticed over the last 6 months that the phone service now and the text service has stabilized a bit, but the growth is still continuing in online chat. And we really believe that is because young people want to actually talk to us in a way that's very private and confidential within their own homes. We know that the demand has steadied, as I said, but we expect the demand to continue to be there for the months and the years to come. And it's just really important that children get the opportunity to talk about what's going on for them, because talking does make you stronger. And childline.ie, you will find all of the services that we offer available on that particular site.
Thank you. And our final question for you is, you recently launched Digital Ready Hub, a campaign to help parents and careers keep children safe online. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we have done a huge amount of work around the whole area of online safety. So it's kind of a key priority issue for the ISPCC. But while we were doing that work, from talking to children and teenagers and parents, teachers, we knew that there was a huge gap in knowledge out there about, well, what is it that we need to know as adults so that we can protect our children? Because adults were saying, my kids know more about this than I do. How can I keep them safe? So we then developed the Digital Ready Hub along with Vodafone. And really, what is it? It's a destination for trusted information on how parents, carers, grandparents, teachers can support children and young people to have positive experiences online and to learn about keeping their children safe. So there are videos, articles, hints and tip sheets, and the videos are coming from psychologists, psychotherapists, Data Protection Commissioner, the Garda Síochána, some internal ISPCC experts as well. So a huge variety of information, but that's a trusted source. There's also a real cool thing about a check. Oh, my time up?
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you very much. We will now go up to our next panelist, which is Spun Out. Our first question is, what's one top tool you would recommend for young people staying connected or mentally well?
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for your question. So yeah, two questions there. So I think staying connected is the very first one. I think one thing that we've seen that has really helped young people over the past year, Ryan, is to just generally staying in touch with their friends, be it from a third level or from school or from their town, and that connectivity that we all had when they were previously, I suppose, always in school or always in third level has been taken away. So just always realizing that quick access to friends is constantly there, and it is, the opportunity to connect is there. So that I think that's the main tip, Ryan, that we would give to young people in trying to use the tools that are available to them.
Okay, thank you. We will now go on to our next question, which is, what Spun Out resources are available to young people?
Cool, Ryan. So in terms of resources, we have mainly two. Okay, we have a 24-hour youth information website. Okay, so we have information on all of the key topics that impact young people, from health to education to employment. Okay, and the key thing, all of our information, all of our content only comes from young people themselves. So we are a place where you will read about the advice and the experiences of other young people who are probably going through the exact same challenges. Okay, and the other resource that we have, folks, we have a 24-hour texting service. Okay, for young people who are in crisis and who would like to reach out for help or a chat over text.
Okay, thank you. And your final question is, how can young people get involved in your work?
Good. So that's a great question for us, because we have loads of roles for young people. Okay, as I said, Ryan, every content, okay, every article on our site, we have hundreds of articles. Young people underpin every piece of content we have. Okay, so we always have a huge need for two things. Okay, young people who would like to write articles. Okay, so that is a huge requirement we have, because we can't get articles out, we can get information out there, okay, without young people who are interested and who are willing to actually write for us. Okay, you don't just write like straight away. Okay, you are always supported by our team. Okay, and the other way then is we have a group of young people. Okay, and their role is to basically tell us what the challenges are where they're from in their school or in their community, so we know we are creating appropriate information on the challenges that young people are. Okay, and finally, you can access information about that just on the volunteering section of our website. Okay,
That's amazing. Thank you very much.
thanks, Ryan.
And we now have Cavarilla and Nanog. First question for you is, what challenges did the youth councils encounter during lockdown? Did council meetings move online?
Yeah, they did move online. So I'm coordinator of Dublin City Cavarilla. So nationally there's 31 Cavarilla. So we all kind of had to go through the same process of moving all of our work online. So for me, for Dublin City, it was how could I make it a welcoming space for the young people to move it online? And because the structure and the essence of Cavarilla is very much led by the young people, and we meet monthly and we meet in between meetings. So it was how to bring that structure and the essence of Dublin City Cavarilla and the way that it's run to an online session like Zoom, which is what we've been using. And even for myself to even get used to that, to hosting meetings and trying to get the young people over. So that was kind of a couple of the main kind of challenges for us.
Okay, thank you. Our next question for you is, what positive mental health well-being skills do you think your members learned during the restrictions that they can use going forward as the country starts to reopen?
Yeah, I think there was quite a few. So when the structure of kind of meeting by Zoom was kind of a lot easier to do, I think because they got to start working on their topics and they could lead again, and we could kind of have the conversations about what they wanted to do. I think some of the skills that they've come out with are social interaction. So they kind of had that kind of link with each other, with their peers, so they could still carry on that link. You know, as it was said, kind of they young people couldn't meet. They weren't kind of in schools, they weren't going to their groups. So with Cavarilla, they could still have that voice, they could still have that presence, they could still meet. They also got to meet new people as well. So there was new members as well come into Cavarilla. So there was that kind of new phase of kind of bringing new people in. So they got to kind of learn those kind of skills, those kind of people skills, social skills. And they did get to contribute still. So that contribution wasn't taken from them. So they could still speak about their issues and their topics.
Thank you, that was great. And last question for you is, how can young people get involved in Cavarilla and Nanog?
Yeah, so every Cavarilla has a AGM, and obviously that's moved online. So we used to have it in Crow Park, but last year we did an online AGM. So the way that it's going to work this year will be the same way that it worked last year. So it's open to all young people from Dublin. So each Cavarilla will have their own kind of area that they focus on. So for Dublin City Cavarilla, it's membership will go out in October. So it's an expression of interest for membership. So it's open to young people aged 12 to 17 years. And you can be in a school, a youth organisation, or you can just apply as a young person who just wants to be involved in Cavarilla. And then there's a process then for kind of young people to be picked as well, to be put onto Cavarilla. So that whole process is going to be on their website. So it's Cavarilla Nog is the website to kind of look out for, and they have an Instagram page as well. So yeah.
That was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Belong To. Our first question for you is, research Belong To carried out in 2020 found that higher numbers of young people in the LGBTQ plus community experienced higher levels of anxiety and stress during lockdown in 2020 compared to others. Is this something that has continued?
Hi, good morning, Ryan and everyone. My name is Sinead Keane and my pronouns are she, her. So just to briefly introduce Belong To, we're the national organisation supporting lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans and intersex young people in Ireland and those who are unsure or questioning their gender identity or sexual orientation. So like you said, Ryan, we did do some research last year, just 6 weeks into the beginning of the pandemic, And we found that a huge number, I think 93% of the young people who responded to our research told us that they were experiencing depression, anxiety, and stress. And that was compared to 53% of the kind of more general youth population. We know that for LGBT young people, being at home can be really difficult because sometimes your family might not accept your sexual orientation or your gender identity. And then for many young people who've been at home over the past year and haven't been able to spend time with their community, their chosen family, other LGBT young people, that's result in increased, I suppose, loneliness and isolation, and then resulting mental health challenges as well.
Thank you. That was amazing. Our next quick question for you is, what kinds of issues were young LGBTQ plus people dealing with from Belong To's perspective?
So I suppose there were kind of two main areas where we saw, I think I mentioned this already, sorry, the time pressure. It feels a lot of pressure to answer within your time limit.
That's fine.
So there were two areas where we saw an increase. There was one, like I spoke of, that kind of like loneliness and isolation and not being sure, feeling safe if you could, I suppose, come out in your home environment or feel safe expressing that to your family in the place you were staying during the pandemic. And the other one is, and we've known this for years, is that a lot of young LGBT young people can feel unsafe at school. And that's often to do with experiencing homophobic, biphobic or transphobic bullying. So that's something that hasn't stopped during the pandemic when young people have gone back to school. So I suppose they're the kind of two main areas, is your home life and maybe not feeling fully accepted in that. And then your school life, maybe experiencing some of that anti-LGBT bullying, or also just maybe not feeling included or represented within the curriculum or your classroom or your school community.
Thank you. And our final question for you is, what piece of advice would you give to young people attending the webinar who are struggling with identity and sexuality?
So I suppose I spoke there about isolation and loneliness, and the opposite of that is connection. And so anyone who's struggling with their gender identity, their sexual orientation, I'd really encourage them to connect with us at Belong To. We support LGBTI youth groups across Ireland, and a lot of them are now actually running online. So you could, have a space to meet with other LGBT young people who might have experienced some of the same challenges that you have as well. If that feels like it's too much for you to go into a group space, a lot of the youth workers that we support do one-to-one support. So that might be over WhatsApp, over email, over phone, whatever you feel comfortable with. We also offer crisis counselling service with Pieta House, and these are all free, 100% confidential services. So I suppose my main piece would be just to connect in with us. On our website as well, we answer loads of questions, have lots of videos, so you can check that out. It's belongto.org.
Thank you. That was amazing.
Thanks.
Our next panelist is Whims. First question, tell us about the work of Whims and resources available.
Hi Ryan, hi everyone. So Welcome Issues was first established in 2012 when a young man in St. Patrick's said he wished his friends could walk in his shoes to understand how he was feeling. And so that's how the campaign started. Since then, we've had thousands of students and teachers from all across Ireland get involved and help us start a very important conversation about mental health. We've run a number of initiatives and events throughout the year, and there are lots of ways that not only teachers and students, but parents can get involved as well. We also have a range of downloadable resources on the website, walkinmyshoes.ie. And on the website, if you have time to visit it today, you'll see there's a dedicated section for young people, for teachers, and for parents too.
Okay, thank you. Our next question for you is, what were the top challenges being reported to Whims during the pandemic?
So in my role, I would speak a lot to a lot of teachers and students that take part in our initiatives. And from hearing from them, I would say there was a couple of challenges that really stood out. For teachers, it was about motivating their students. But then for the students themselves, it's about staying motivated. So with all the schools moving online, and the teachers not being able to have that face-to-face, the daily face-to-face conversations with their students, school staff had to really think outside the box, and we're looking for different ways to motivate their students. So things like our Frame of Mind short film competition worked really well this year because it helped teachers to do just that. And we actually introduced a TikTok category, which is really popular with students this year, but it gave them a nice project to focus on. We also, in Welcome Issues, like everyone else, we had to move things online as well. And we also had to think outside the box. So we ran events to, I suppose, assist teachers and students. So just a couple of events that on top of my head, we ran a self-care conference or webinar for young people. Sorry, I go really quickly. And we also ran a webinar on exploring mental health careers. They're all still available. We recorded them, so they're all available on the Welcome Issues YouTube channel.
Okay. And our final question for you is, how can young people get involved with Whims?
So there are lots of ways to get involved. I quickly run through some of our initiatives. I'm very worried about the time I'm under. So we run a transition year program, which Tamara mentioned that Ryan was a participant on. It's a 1-week mental health awareness program conducted by clinical staff in St. Patrick's Mental Health Services. Applications are actually open for that now for the next academic year. If anyone's interested in applying, all the information is on the website. So just log on to welcomeissues.ie and you'll see it there. We also run our Mission Possible, which is our School Achievement Awards that recognises the roles that schools play in promoting mental health. We also have Frame of Mind that I got in there a few minutes ago. It's our short film competition with a TikTok category. We also have Whims Live, which is a month-long programme of wellbeing content to mark World Mental Health Day in October. And then, of course, we have Mind Yourselfie as well. But all of the events that we've run over the past 12 or 14 months have been recorded and added to our YouTube channel as a resource, so everyone can avail of it no matter where you are.
Thank you. Our next thank you. Our next panelist is SVMHS. Our first question for you is, what are the challenges that you have faced when treating people presenting to you with eating disorders over the last few months?
Hi, Ryan. Yeah, so I work with young people who struggle with eating difficulties, and I think for all of us at the moment, as Paul was saying earlier, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much kind of added pressure and demands that we all have to cope with at the moment, and I think this can be particularly difficult for young people with eating disorders. I think a lot of the time we really kind of advise young people to focus on kind of their strengths and their resources, and I suppose in order for us to stay mentally well, we need to kind of have plenty of things in our life that kind of soothe us and kind of help us to feel relaxed and calm, and then also kind of things that help us to kind of have a sense of activation and achievement. And a lot of those things that young people would usually go to, so kind of connecting with friends and kind of doing activities that they're interested in, and a lot of those things haven't been possible, I suppose, for young people because of lockdown and things being closed. So I think that's been really challenging. It's kind of like we kind of still have to do the hard parts of life, so kind of study in school, but yeah, I suppose not as much of the difficult or the supportive pieces. God, that minute goes really fast.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Our next question for you is, in your opinion, how do you think lockdown has affected some young people and their relationship with food?
Sure. Yeah, I suppose it kind of ties in a little bit to the that uncertainty piece that I was talking about there. I suppose there's a lot of uncertain things going on at the moment, a lot of unpredictability, and that can make us all feel a bit more anxious. And I think for all of us, when we're anxious, we can get a little bit more kind of rigid, I suppose, in terms of how we think, a little bit more fixed. So we might get kind of quite preoccupied with certain things to help us feel, I suppose, a little bit in control. And I think for a lot of young people, if we think about loads of uncertainty, lots of different things going on, what can we control? Oftentimes it's what we put into our body, so the food that we eat. And I think this means that a lot of young people can get really kind of focused on food and kind of preoccupied with food. And I know a lot of the young people I work with would say that lockdown really hasn't helped with that, because they'd say that usually they'd be going to school, doing lots of different activities, seeing friends, maybe wouldn't have as much time to kind of think about food. But I suppose lockdown has meant that there's more time, so they're a little bit more kind of preoccupied with food. And I think as well as social media, which can be great, I rush through this bit, but there's also a lot around kind of food and kind of fitness and kind of lockdown step challenges and keeping fit. So there's a lot of focus on food, I think, online, which can be a little bit unhelpful sometimes.
Okay, thank you. And our final question for you is, what advice would you give to a young person who may have an eating disorder or is recovering from an eating disorder?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a tricky question in ways, because I think for young people, eating disorders can kind of function in different ways. So they can kind of serve different purposes for different people. So for example, for some young people, it can be a way of kind of feeling a little bit in control. For some people, it can be kind of to do with managing like negative body image. So I think depending on, I think maybe ask yourself, what function does the eating disorder kind of serve for me? So what is it kind of doing for me? Because oftentimes it kind of might help people to cope in the short term, but maybe in the long term it can kind of create a little bit more difficulty for people. But yeah, maybe just kind of asking what is a function of this for me, and then if it is to kind of feel a little bit better about myself, or if it is to get a sense of achievement, or it might be about kind of thinking about another way that I can meet that need. So yeah, just asking yourself kind of, how does it function for me? I think also kind of talking, expressing feelings. A lot of young people that I work with would kind of bottle up how they feel. So I think really, yeah, just kind of opening up and kind of getting support from those around you, I think.
Okay, thank you. That was amazing. Our final panelist is Shelbourne Youth Academy. Our first question for you is, how have the public health restrictions impacted the Academy's activities for young people?
Yeah, firstly, just as part of my time, to say well done, Ryan. You're doing a really good job. Yeah, so obviously back in March, we had to stop playing football, and that included matches and also training. So from March until July, we had no football training or anything. We were fortunate to come back in July until September to play games, but we had to stop then again in September to play games, but still allowed to have training until December. And obviously from December until April, there was no training or matches. So it's been real up and down year for all of the academy. I think over 13 months, there's been 8 months where they had no football, which was really disappointing. But now it looks like that we're, again, touch wood, that we're kind of back training and playing matches in June. So that's great. And it's great to have kind of that structure back for all the teams involved in the academy.
Okay, thank you. Our second last question for you is, what are the benefits of sports and teamwork for well-being?
Yeah, well, I think like fitness is obviously kind of from a physical point of view helps contribute to the well-being. But from a mental point of view, I think we have a massive kind of play on the collective and kind of the lads and girls understand the importance of the collective. So we, not me. That's on the pitch, where if something goes wrong, everyone supports each other and helps out each other. But then obviously that can kind of lead to off the pitch, whether it's in school, just hanging out with your friends, that if there is something kind of going wrong, that it is important that the collective as a team can help that person out. So I think that's really, really important, and hopefully teamwork contributes to that.
Okay, thank you. And our last question, and which is the final question also, is what positive mental health well-being skills do you think your members learned during the restrictions that they can use going forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So during kind of whenever we weren't allowed on the pitch, we had at-home training. So that's when we would set challenges, have lads and girls put in videos and photos and times of different challenges that we had. So that kind of allowed them to encourage each other. It was a way of kind of, having positive talk. But I think that the players definitely are more aware of that now, that the encouragement and positive talk really, really does help their teammates. I think a second thing, and it's already kind of been mentioned, I think even the age group that I are working with is 13-year-olds, and they're so conscious now of their well-being. And I think that they're definitely more open to talking about how they're feeling. So players come up to me before training and tell me how they're feeling and maybe something that might be annoying them at home, and how ready they are for training and matches, which is excellent to see. So I'm really proud of them coming through this, and I think that's kind of maybe the message that everyone's put across, that it's really been a tough time, but it's amazing to see some of the reactions and the positivity. So
thank you. That was amazing.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks.
Before I say goodbye, this is all the questions before I leave. I would like to say that I was thankful for this opportunity to be here and to be able to help out, and I hope everyone else had a great time. Thank you.
Ryan, thank you so much. You were such an amazing moderator. What a pro. Like, we asked you to try and ensure our speakers stuck to time. And I really think some seasoned presenters could learn a thing or two from you today and how you manage that role. It's not easy. And I know today was the first day of your summer holidays as well. So we're really, really grateful to you. Thank you so much for helping out. We're delighted to have you here. Also to our panelists and speakers, that brings us to the end of today's event. Thank you so much for being part of it and for sharing so many useful tips and so much information about the organizations you're representing. To our attendees, thank you. We really hope you've gotten something out of today's event. That's going to be of help to you in the days, weeks and months ahead as we approach the end of the school year and we emerge from lockdown. And we've just added a link there to our feedback survey in the chat box, and we'd really appreciate it if you do have a couple of minutes, take some time just there to fill it out, and it helps us to improve our events into the future. And we are going to send a link on by email to all of the attendees in the next few days with a recording of this event. So I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a great summer. Take care. Bye-bye.